Sony's Gangs of London is taking to the streets in the PSP this October. The action-packed, gritty, and often tactical shooter means you'll have plenty of decisions to make when it comes to securing and expanding your turf. There are a few things you ought to know about the game's tactical combat, though, that are sure to help you in the heat of battle. If your gang is going to succeed, they're going to have to work as a team. The first thing to know is that on some missions, you'll be given control of multiple gang members to cycle through. This is done using the circle button. It's usually a good idea to cycle through your gang members to utilize their advantages of position and weaponry to overcome the situation at hand. You should also know that your gang members aren't just extra lives. The ones who survive gain experience at the end of each mission and can eventually receive boosts to their damage resistance and combat levels, making your gang tougher as a whole in the end. You can help keep the gang members fresh by resting them in between fights. While resting, their health will be restored, which of course means all the difference in the world when the bullets start flying. To rest your entire gang, just access the tactical menu and use the Stay Here command to re-energize your troops. Don't use this too often though, as the more it's employed, the less effective it becomes over time. More on that in a bit though. When it comes to combat, it's all about tactical decision making. Recognizing and eliminating the most outstanding threat is certainly the best way to go. Because of the diversity in each gang's combat style and weaponry, you'll have to assess each situation and be able to handle making the call on the fly. For example, if you're facing two goons armed with clubs while a grenadier is tossing the goods at your troops, it'd be best to eliminate the grenadier first, and then handle the hand-to-hand combat. To make this process easier, Sony has given you quick access to issue commands to the troops you're not directly in control of. The tactical menu is accessed by pressing and holding the circle button. Once there, you'll be able to issue the Go Forward, Stay Here, and Group Up commands that direct to the location of your troops. You'll also have access to the Gang command, which allows you to cycle through the members using the D-pad to make more precise decision-making. Of course, all the tactics in the world won't mean a thing if you can't get down to business with your weapon in melee combat. When you're carrying a gun, holding down the R trigger will allow you to lock onto the closest enemy, which produces a red aura around the opponent. When you see a brighter than usual aura, that means you can take that thug down with a single shot. Handy indeed. You'll be firing a lot of bullets, so it's best to keep an eye on your ammo level listed in the top left corner of the screen. Your character will automatically reload if the clip goes empty, but keeping an eye on the gauge and hitting square to reload at more opportune times will keep you out of potentially critical situations. Using cover is a practical advantage that you should utilize when in combat. Tapping the square button will allow your character to crouch and use waist-high objects for much-needed cover. You can also fire blind at your opponent by getting right up to your cover and pressing the R trigger. You'll also want to keep an eye out for explosive materials lying within the environment. These can be a huge advantage in any gunfight and can be exploited by locking onto an explosive target, keeping it at a safe distance, and pulling the trigger. It's not all about the big bangs in Gangs of London, though, as some missions will require a stealthier approach. When infiltrate objective is part of a mission, this means you'll have to utilize one melee-armed gang member to complete it. Sneaking past patrolling guards and other armed gunmen is made easier by crouching behind cover and stealthily moving throughout the environment. When an enemy has his back turned and is in the proper position, you'll see your character raise his hand, indicating that a stealth attack can be initiated by simply pressing the X button. When it comes to the main melee combat in Gangs of London, there are a few key things to know before the fisticuffs start flying. You perform melee attacks by hitting the X button. Hit it 3 times and you'll do a combo attack. Be careful that you don't keep hitting the X button once your enemy has taken a defensive position, however, as the devastating counterattack could leave you hurting for good. The best thing you could do when your opponent goes defensive is to hit the triangle button and initiate a grapple move. This will allow you to grapple with them and move side to side, where you can get a better shot past their guard by pressing square twice. Your opponent isn't the only one with defensive abilities, of course. You too can play it safe at times by hitting the R button and initiating a defensive stance of your own. This only really comes in handy with attacks originating from directly in front of you, though, so be wise in choosing when to attack and when to defend. The last and one of the most important tactical areas of the game lies in driving. Each gang has specific attributes when it comes to their vehicles, but overall, there are a few general things you have to know to survive. First, the turn signals on the back of the car will guide you to your current objectives, or if you want, you can set the direct path yourself from the game's own map of London. Once on the streets, driving skill will prove to be a vital component of your gang's success. Taking turns sharply and often means it will be more difficult for opponents to keep up. Utilizing the handbrake and the regular brakes in succession will give you the traction and proper speed you'll need to leave your pursuers in the dust. If they do get close, however, you can tap the L trigger for a rear view mirror look to see what lane they're in behind you. Drift closely towards the oncoming traffic in that lane and watch the sparks fly as your opponent comes dangerously close to a head-on collision with another car or even a lamppost or a building. Sometimes you'll have the ability to place multiple gang members in your vehicle. This is most handy when it comes to drive-by shootings, but you have to be tactical in deciding where your characters are placed within the car. Each character can shoot out of the window he's seated next to, so be sure to plan ahead when setting out to swiftly eliminate your foes. Lastly, be sure to keep an eye on your vehicle's damage meter. It's located in the upper left-hand corner of the screen and indicates when the car is about to quit running and fill up with smoke. Your characters can't survive long in the smoke, not to mention an incapacitated vehicle, so be sure to ditch your ride and find another before you get to that point. Hopefully, these tactics will help you out once you hit the mean streets of London. It's no easy task taking your gangs to the top of the food chain, but with these tactics in mind, you should have a better chance of doing just that in Gangs of London for the PSP.